And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, Director at WEIU. On the phone with me today is our guest, Krista Taylor. Welcome, Krista.
Thank you very much for having me.
Krista is a licensed clinical professional counselor with Carle, the Carle Hoopston Regional Health Center. Krista, I appreciate you calling in on this Monday.
Thank you.
We're going to today talk a lot to you about the mental health side of the crisis and COVID and the pandemic. So I thought I'd just let you have the first word and just maybe give us an overview of some of the things that you like to make note of as we're going through this pandemic altogether.
Well, I guess a couple things that kind of occur to me is, right now it's a very interesting time in terms of what is happening. This is my first pandemic. I assume it's yours. Most people going through this, and so we don't have a roadmap for how to navigate a situation like this. And so there's a lot of people who have sort of fear and worry about their own health or their health of their loved ones. Their financial situation may have changed because of job situation, or support services that they rely on may have changed. Kids are home sometimes, and so that's different. And so kind of how we work, like I'm still working, but how I'm working, it looks different than it did. And so there is a lot of sort of uncertainty, and this is a new time, and nobody really knows what the right answers are, right? And so we're kind of all trying to navigate this the best that we can. And so we're seeing an impact on people's mental health. And so right now we just kind of have anecdotal evidence about what the impact has been. There's been some surveys done and things, but we know that this is going to be a difficult time. And when you think about the responsibilities of first-line responders and the experience of loss for those who have lost a loved one during this time, it can be just a very challenging situation.
Have you seen I know the answer, but have you seen a marked increase in the number of people that are coming to you or your services to ask questions and know if they have depression or anxiety?
So the answer is yes, in a couple different ways I can kind of talk about just in my own experience. And so one of the things is for a person who already has issues with mental health, is kind of exacerbated that. So, right, if you are an anxious person, you might find yourself even more anxious and more worried. If you are prone to having issues with depression, right, that might be a challenge for you at this time. And then one of the things I'm kind of noticing where I'm at is, people I have seen maybe a couple years ago who were discharged are kind of now back in my schedule of, we're all having difficulty adjusting. And so seeking therapy and seeking support is really helpful, right, as we try to navigate this situation.
Yeah. And it seems to me it's the anxiety of every day something new seemingly occurs or happens or changes. How do you deal with that from your aspect? So,
one of the things I think about is there's been great communication about how do we take care of our physical health right now, right?
Yep.
We all know wash your hands, wear a mask, socially distance, right? This is how we take care of ourselves physically, but we haven't been given as much guidance mentally. And so a couple things I sort of think about are, we know that loneliness and isolation is a contributor to poor mental health. And of course, now we're in a situation in which we have to be isolated from one another at times.
Yeah.
But one of the things that can be really important is staying connected. Happy people tend to be relatively social. And it's really hard when you think about how do we as a society respond in a time of crisis, right? We come together when there's a hurricane or a tsunami, right? We do things to help one another. And we've seen some of this, right, in creative ways. Like, I think about, early on in the pandemic, the Italians out on their balconies all singing together, right? Of, hey, we can't be physically together, but we can have this moment. And so one of the things that can really go a long way is maintaining kind of connections with the people that we love and that support us. And so sometimes, technology is great for that. We all have phones for the most part, and so we can call. But if you can do a video chat, a FaceTime kind of thing, that's really helpful. And it's a good way to connect.
Yeah, it seems to me if you would have said Zoom and TikTok in February, I probably wouldn't have known what you were talking about. But those two social media have really at least let us keep in together with people in this in a weird format with TikTok, and then with Zoom, it's really helped people kind of maintain their working environment with the ability to video and talk to each other with some by looking at people, which I think is helpful of what you're saying as well.
Right. Right, and so when you do a video call, you can see someone's facial expression, you can hear the emotion in their voice, and so, like right now, in what I'm doing to serve the people that I work with, that's the only way we can do it. Pretty much, I have a few people I see in person, but for the most part, it's phone and it's a video communication. And if you had asked me prior to all of this happening what I thought about, telehealth services, I would have been very skeptical of, can I make the same connection I make with a person right when I get to see them and, that we're in the same room and we're having the experience. And I have found it's very effective. And it's very, it solves a lot of problems right now because, if you're a parent and you have to be home with your children because you don't have childcare, well, I can let the kids go nap and I will have my session at that time. Or transportation sometimes is an issue for people. And now this is sort of a way around that during these difficult times.
And they also don't have an excuse, right? For you.
But, it's just been very interesting to see this is changing, right, how we do things. But, many providers are doing things differently so that we can continue to offer the support and reach people.
We're all under a lot of stress right now. I guess, when is the breaking point for you would like to see someone call you if they know the stress has reached max level? Is there a way for individuals to tell? Because I think that's I find the hardest part of this whole thing is we all are going through some stress and a little bit of depression, but how do we know when, man, it's maxed out, I need to call somebody?
Well, I think about if you're having deep issues and changes in sleeping or eating or self-care, things like that. If you anytime you have any thought of hurting yourself or any kind of dangerous thought like that, that's really when you want to reach out and make sure you're having conversations with a provider somewhere. If you have, if you find yourself relying on kind of unhealthy coping skills, right? So, I'm drinking more, I'm smoking more, I'm eating too much, right?
Yep.
If you find that, your self-care is really declining, then that can really be a signal to get some help.
We're talking to Krista Taylor from Carle. She's a licensed clinical professional counselor. We're talking about the mental aspect of dealing with COVID in the year 2020. But the neat thing I saw in your email is that you are trying to make and have some fun with your clients. So talk a little bit about how you implement some fun with dealing with people.
So, just like, the medical professionals out there making decisions about what we do during this time, as a therapist, we're trained and educated in what are effective interventions for dealing with anxiety or dealing with depression. And one of the things is being able to sort of reframe an experience. And so, a comedic reframe, right,
yep.
Can help us if you've ever gone through something really stressful and difficult, right, and you're feeling really immersed in that experience. Sometimes, if you can kind of take a step back and just laugh about it. And so one of the things that I did with some of the people that I work with is I had the ability with my video platform to change my background. And so when I talk to people, I'll be like, if you could be anywhere in the world, right? Maybe you had to cancel a trip or you were supposed to go somewhere or do something and you can't do that. Let me take you there virtually. And so all kinds of people, someone wanted to be at the Harley Museum because they can't get out on their bike right now as much as they want to, and someone else was supposed to go to Florida, right? And so this place or that place. And so this is just my own little, fantasy me on the bridge of the Enterprise, right?
Yeah.
But just kind of helping, and that does help us in times of stress, of being able to look at a situation differently.
It's a great answer. The other thing that I think is starting to prepare to stress us out is a lot of parents are getting ready to send their kids back to either grade school, high school, or off to college. How are you dealing with that? And are there any tips for those folks?
So I think one of the things, especially, it depends on the age of your children. So some of the people I work with are kind of preparing their kids of, hey, we're going to wear a mask for an hour today. So kind of getting them prepared and having a conversation about here's why you're going to wear a mask, here's what it's for, so children aren't scared and they have an understanding going into the experience of, oh, I'm doing this so I don't get anyone else sick, and it's an act of love, and it is a compassionate thing I'm doing. And they can have a conversation, talk about it, and get used to that. So with some of the younger kids, those are good conversations to have in language they understand of, hey, what are we doing? And why can't I hug everybody and give high fives, right?
Yeah.
And then with the older students, I have a couple college-age students, it's going to look different. And so it's about having a conversation to me with the older students about responsibility of you may not get sick, but avoiding large gatherings and avoiding, doing things that could expose you to something and then bring it back to grandma or anyone else that you love and care about. And so it's having conversations about, it's frustrating that we may not have in-person classes at some college campuses, and giving people the opportunity to voice that disappointment and process it and talk about it of, yes, that's really stressful and I really understand you're disappointed and here is why we're doing that, and talking about this is one of the things we do as a responsible person, right, as part of adulting.
How surprised are you? What has surprised you most about dealing with this during a pandemic?
What has surprised me the most? I think I am very surprised by a lack of sort of a unified message at times for whatever reason. And the only reason I say that is because I think that then there's confusion if we have a very clear message. Like, I'm very lucky where I work. I work with medical professionals, right? Providers and people. And so we knew as an organization, it had been communicated by the administration, hey, as soon as we get, a positive COVID test in our service area, here's the plan, right? And so I knew the plan, and everyone else who worked there knew the plan. And we had the security of knowing, here's what we're going to do, and here's what it's going to look like. And a lot of people did not have that. And so if you have one person saying this and someone else saying that, I think there's confusion. And one of the other things is, technology is absolutely wonderful, right? It enables me to see the people I work with, right, and serve my clients well, and the other providers. But it also can be a little dangerous because there's misinformation, and, you can be confused or you can be scared. And so that was kind of surprising to me. I think it's difficult for people to navigate a landscape when they don't really know, like, who to listen to and who to believe. Right? So
yeah. I was going to say it's a great answer. You're right, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What do you think one can do if they just feel anxious and scared about COVID? They don't want to see a counselor. They don't want to call anybody. Do you have any self-help tips? I know it goes against what you do as a person, but I think in this world we live right now, it's a little bit nutty. So if someone is just feeling overly anxious, is there any tips you could give them, Krista?
So one of the things I think about are things that help us with anxiety is focusing on the things we can impact. There may be a lot of things in the world I'm worried about that I cannot impact, right? I cannot control that there is a pandemic right now. What I can focus on is washing my hands and staying home and avoiding crowds and staying connected. Another great thing for people is routine. When a lot of people got sent home or were home and their situation changed, they got out of the practice of getting up and taking a shower and getting dressed and moving and connecting and talking, right? Yeah. And so one of the things that really helps people is get back into a routine. If you're home and you don't have, the things you used to do, create a new routine. all the things that we know are good for us anyway, of get plenty of sleep, right? Eat good foods, move. All of those are things anybody can do. And then again, I really stress connecting with other people. That's really important for us. When we start to get depressed, and sometimes when we start to get anxious, we tend to isolate. And so putting ourselves in situations where, scheduling a daily check-in with mom or someone in your support system, or if you're not at work, have a video chat like you used to around the water cooler, right? It's important to maintain those relationships. And so no matter where you are, that is something you can control.
And that's one thing I want to ask you about, and it's a touchy situation because EIU in the dorms for this fall is going to give everybody the opportunity to live alone. And I know many colleges across the country are saying, "Hey, EIU, come to this college because you'll have your own dorm room," which seems great, if you're a college student. But it's also a little scary in the fact that these kids are going to be alone. Having a college roommate's kind of the fun part of college. Sometimes it's not fun, but trust me, I've had both good and bad when I was going to college. What are your thoughts on colleges saying live alone?
So I think, again, it's about you're alone in your space because you can control that space.
Yeah.
But there are always opportunities. As I talk to students who are going off to college for the first time, one of the things I always stress to them is, whatever you're interested in, whether, you like theater or video games or photography or you have a political affiliation, there are groups on campus that do those things, that have those same interests. Find people, join clubs, join organizations, become active. And maybe the groups are now meeting socially distanced, or maybe they're doing Zoom sessions, or however they're staying connected. But those are still opportunities for socialization. And again, like when you're in class, those students who you find yourself really connecting with, you can still have relationships. You just have to be cautious, right, about large gatherings and things like that. So I think enjoy the college experience, right? Make friends. That's one of the best parts about being at college is the people that you meet and views that are different, the things that you learn about yourself and other people in the world, right?
Yeah.
Take full advantage of that opportunity. Just because you're, sleeping alone in your room doesn't mean you have to stay in there 24/7. So it's still about developing relationships. You have to just be more cautious at this time.
What happens if you think you know somebody or see someone who is way too stressed and they're close to the brink? The intervention's always the tough word. I mean, what should someone do?
So I like this question because I think we have all seen a person struggle.
Yep.
And kind of said to ourselves, gosh, I really want to help, but I don't want to overstep my bounds and I don't know what to do. And I think, a lot of times it's just kind of expressing your concern. Jeff, I really noticed, you were doing this or that, or you seem really nervous today, or here's what I'm observing. How are you doing? And just ask the question. And if you feel like they could use some help, to just say, hey, sometimes it really helps me to talk to someone. Have you thought about maybe talking to a counselor or one of your professors, or one of your friends? Or a great thing to ask a person when you think they're very stressed is, what can I do to help? How can I support you? So instead of just making an assumption, I know what you need, I can ask you, hey, Jeff, what would take, some of the load off your plate? Is there something I can do? Or engage them in, hey, you want to go for a walk? Or, could we just go have a cup of coffee? And maybe you just need a distraction and someone to listen. Right? We all need to be heard. And so that's an opportunity for you to say, I'm just kind of worried. Are you okay? And check in. And ask them, what can I do to be supportive to you? And then maybe finding ways to help distract them and get them in a different place, or encourage them to seek professional help.
Another good answer. You know what you're doing. Is there symptoms? Are there symptoms of depression and stress that people can maybe now start to pay attention to and notice more, or is it more people keep it inside and bottled up?
I think one of the other things that's sort of happening in the world right now is we have sort of forced time together of our social bubbles got very, very small. And so, couples are home and families are home and everybody's home. And, we may have had this wonderful fantasy of, if only I had all this free time with my partner, right? And now they're just getting on my every last nerve. And so it's thinking about, when you ask about depression, I think the things are, again, like any thoughts of hurting yourself or others, always a danger. But I think a lot of it is just sort of, we have a lot of right now, sort of quarantine fatigue. We're all bored of being home, and we're bored of not being able to go where we want. And so, again, part of it, I think, is, be kind to yourself, be patient. Follow that routine. Take time out for the things you enjoy. Read a book, watch a comedy, do something. We love to cook at my house, so let's try new recipes. Let's do things. Get outside, get some sunshine, get some fresh air. That's good for you. Finding ways to exercise. Avoiding those, unhealthy coping skills like drinking and smoking too much and eating too much and those kinds of things. And so I think we always have to kind of be on guard. And a lot of it is, if you're with a person, like you were just talking about, check in with them. Hey, yeah, you seem a little irritable. What's going on there? What do you need? Do you need time to yourself? Do you need to go for a walk? Do you need a hot bath? Like, what can we work on together? Right now it's important to take care of our body and spirit, right? And so whether you take up a new practice, right, if you have time, do some yoga, do some meditation, things like that, or just thinking about really, good self-care, I think, too.
Since this pandemic started, what do people ask you the most? They see you on the street or in the office or wherever?
I think a lot of people ask the question, am I crazy or is this normal? Like, I'm having this experience. Am I crazy? And again, I go back to, none of us have a guideline for how to get through a pandemic. And so it's thinking about and it's working on those things we know are good for ourselves. I just talked a second ago about really good self-care. One of the other things that I will say to people is, if you're really struggling, helping other people is a great way to help yourself feel better, right? And just like panic is contagious, calm is contagious, right? And so we can all be a calming influence, If when I talk to someone, I'll say, I totally understand, what this is for you, and I get why you're feeling that way. Let's work on some things to bring that down. Let's figure out how we get you to a place where you're functioning and you're feeling okay. But I think a lot of people are just really concerned of, will this ever end? And how do I move through something when it changes day to day and I don't know the answers, right?
Yeah. Well,
and go ahead.
No. I was saying you made me think about, like, during this pandemic right now, we've been going through it for whatever, 150 days or whatever. Is there somebody that's at the most high risk? And is it female, male, older, younger? What's the highest risk for mental health issues?
So that's a really hard question to answer.
I'm sorry.
Because again, we know all we have right now is sort of anecdotal kind of survey information. We don't know yet. I think persons who already were struggling, so people who had like food insecurity or had financial concerns prior to the pandemic, and then this impacted their life in that situation. A person who may have been in a domestic violence situation prior to this. A person who had a drug issue or an addiction problem prior to this. That can, all of the situation we're in now can just exacerbate those kinds of issues. And so it's really thinking about, if a person had, was struggling before with some things, this just may have magnified the problems that they're having.
Do you think a vaccine will be available within the next 3 to 6 months?
Man, I wish I knew.
I was hoping you were just going to say yes.
I wish I had a fortune ball. I do not.
The state, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, and I apologize in advance. Right before the show came on the air, the state of Illinois launched 3 new health programs. Are you aware of what they are? Mental health programs? Are you aware what they're doing at the Illinois Department of Human Services, or have you had a chance to read up on those?
I have not heard that. What I was aware of within our community, like here in Coles County, the local mental health center got a grant to help some underinsured or not insured persons who are having symptoms due to COVID. And so that was a wonderful program to help people who might have been struggling for help before.
Okay.
But no, I don't know about this, so I'll have to do some research.
There you go. What about resources via Carle or other places that people can go to if they want to read some stuff online or make a phone call?
So there's always the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and there is on the CDC website, there are some great resources as well. Locally, most community crisis centers, like whatever county you're in, usually has a community mental health center. They usually have a crisis line or crisis services. And Illinois has a really great thing called the Illinois Warm Line, which is Monday through Friday. And again, not a hotline, right, like you're in crisis, but warm.
I like that.
The Warm Line, I love it because it's actually manned by persons with lived mental health issues who are specially trained to just kind of talk you through the experience you're having. And so that's a Monday through Friday thing. And if you look online Google any of that, and you'll find it.
All right.
And of course, Carle and other local providers have therapists available.
We got about a minute and a half left, so let's ask some unrelated questions to kind of end our show today.
Okay.
But you already said one. I know you're going to like this one. One of my things, I did not know this about you, but what's your favorite thing you like to cook?
I like making mean shepherd's pie, but during COVID, I just perfected homemade enchilada sauce. I'm pretty proud about that.
Wow. Your favorite medical-related movie or TV show?
Medical-related? Oh my gosh.
It could be therapy-related if that makes it easier.
I really like Good Will Hunting.
There you go. Do you have a pet? And if so, what's his or her name?
I do not happily have the responsibility of a pet in my life right now.
Then do you have a hobby besides cooking?
I love to go kayaking.
There you go. Your first car was a?
My first car was a Volvo station wagon that was white, and I called it Moby Dick.
That's awesome. Well, Krista Taylor from Carle Hoopson Regional Health Center in Mattoon, thanks so much for joining us today, and hopefully some people got some good information from you today. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
You too. This is WEIU. Everybody have a great day.